Channel. I'm Anthony Davis, and it's a brand new day. In fact, it's the last day of the week. It's Friday, January 21, and we've got lots to talk about today. This is, as you know, oh, there it comes. That's the sweet sounds that I was waiting for. The sweet sounds of a grunge soundtrack. Backchannel is the only place you can listen to, watch and chat with the hosts of live shows right here on your device. If it's an echo show, then you can just wake it up, say the word "say," and then your message. You can also follow us on YouTube. Just search my name and Backchannel, and then the web chat is available for you. Just type in, this is me typing, you can just type in backchannel.tv. Lots to talk about today. A look across America via sharing what's on the front pages of newspapers in towns and cities. And don't forget, you can message and let me know which newspaper you would like for us to check out for you. Any newspaper, any state, and we'll work that into the show. There's an exceptional American local newspaper journalism that currently exists, has been around a long, long time. Very much in evidence from Pulitzer Prize-winning papers and some of the best stories over the past few months from local papers as well. Ivory-billed woodpeckers once plied the swampy canopies of the southeastern United States, according to the Fort Myers News Press. And are they now extinct? More on that. And get in touch if you remember the little swampy creature from your childhood. Also, electric vehicles first appeared in the mid-19th century. We'll take a look at the history of the electric car. And it's exactly a year ago today since Avril Haines was sworn in as the first female U.S. Director of National Intelligence. We'll look at her unusual backstory. And celebrating the life of Meatloaf, everybody's favorite lunchtime family snack. No, I'm kidding. It's, of course, the Bat Out of Hell singer, known for his powerful sound and spectacular live shows, including the Rocky Horror Picture Show. He sadly passed away at the age of 74, so we'll take a look at his life and his work as well. So, what a show. I mean, that's practically it. I might as well just go now. It's done. But let's take a look at today's newspaper. Let's see what we have. The Bradenton Herald, we're going to start with in Florida. We just move that into a whole new window. There we go. A whole new window. They lead with Florida elections officials suspect casino petition fraud. Florida could be in the midst of one of the largest cases of election-related fraud in recent history, says the newspaper. Also, construction underway for Bradenton area's 6th Wawa. Is that a store? Is that what Wawa is? It's a classic hoagie turkey, the company's most popular sandwich. Oh, it's like a sandwich store. I mean, this is such a cultural learning curve for me. Thank you, Florida, for your Wawa turkey sandwich store. And DeSantis map ignites legal fight. Oh, that's right. Hello, Paula, in Kentucky. We'll get a Kentucky newspaper for you straight away, and we'll see what's happening there. DeSantis map ignites legal fight over redistricting maps. It says until this week, the bitter partisan warfare and intra-party strife that traditionally engulfs Florida's redistricting battles had been noticeably subdued. And then Governor Ron DeSantis lit a match, is the headline. The Senate agreed to amendment from Senator Chevron Jones, and a photograph of him on the front of the newspaper. Okay, what's next on the old list? Paula in Kentucky, which newspaper would you prefer? We have a choice of two. You can have the Daily News, or from Bowling Green, yes, the Bowling Green Daily News, or the Henderson Gleaner. Pick one. A third one. Unbelievable. Or the Lexington Herald as well. So, you choose. Just tell us. All you have to do, Paula, is just, wake up your device if you haven't done that already. Say the word "say" and then what you want to say. Then your message. Or you can type. If you're in Louisville, we've also got the Louisville Advertiser? Oh, that's right, yes. I have a friend from Louisville, so I know a little bit about that area. So in the meantime, whilst you decide, we're gonna jump to Florida and go to the Tampa Bay. We're gonna go to the news press in Fort Myers. Whilst you're deciding, Paula, and then we'll kind of come back to you. The news press: Senate breaks with DeSantis. Redrawn district maps move forward while governor's proposal is ignored by legislators. It says the Senate advanced redrawn congressional and Senate boundaries on Wednesday that would help Republicans maintain their dominance, but ignored a proposal by Governor Ron DeSantis that could send even more Florida GOP members to Washington. Sort through the debris. Fort Myers homeowners survey destruction left by tornado. Yes, this was a kind of shocking tornado in Florida. I think like 30 mobile homes were destroyed. So some photographs here of some sisters searching through their mobile home in Century 21 mobile home park near Iona, near Fort Myers yesterday. All right, next up on the old newspaper front, Tampa Bay. Let's go to the Tampa Bay Times. Back to home plate is the headline. Major League Baseball killed the Tampa Bay Rays' plan for split season with Montreal. It says the Rays' proposed plan to split seasons in Montreal has been killed by Major League Baseball officials, creating even more uncertainty about the team's long-term future in Tampa Bay. There it is. And also Bay Area leaders react to Rays' dash dream. I mean, this is the whole front page pretty much is devoted to sport, Major League Baseball, which I hear is a sport. I think it's a new sport. Maybe they just started doing it. I don't know what kind of ball it uses. I guess like a soccer ball or maybe a snooker ball. Yeah, maybe I need to see some baseball films. But I told you my favorite musical is a baseball musical. Isn't that crazy? My favorite musical is a baseball musical called Damn Yankees. You know? Damn Yankees. It was written in like 1959 or something, 1958. So weird. I have such eclectic tastes. The reason I know about the musical Damn Yankees is because it came to London and there was somebody in it that I really wanted to see. And for that reason, I went to see it twice. And the guy who starred in it was the great American comedian Jerry Lewis, arguably one of the greatest comedians in history. And I was obsessed with him for many years. And there's a very good book by Sean Levy called King of Comedy, which talks all about, the sadness of Jerry Lewis, because, of course, Tears of a Clown. In fact, the cover art of this book is like Happy Jerry and then clown face painted Sad Jerry. Well, Jerry Lewis was partners with Dean Martin, and they were the highest paid comedians on television from around 1954 through 1963. I mean, their first big TV syndicated show was called the Colgate Comedy Hour. And where the hosts had to do the commercials because there was no videotape back then. So they had to do it live. And it was done live from a theater here in Hollywood, right opposite the Capitol Records building, which I've been to actually. And it's, I went to pay homage, and it's now a nightclub, but the bar is still called the Jerry Lewis Bar. And the Colgate Comedy Hours, I have on DVD, I have copies of all they made literally hundreds of episodes of the Colgate Comedy Hour. And, back then they didn't have, well, it was a variety show because, this is very early days of television. So they didn't really have, the kind of formats that we have on TV now. They literally did live shows that were filmed live. They didn't have videotape, so they couldn't record the show and then play it out later. The show had to be live. So it's invariably shot with one camera and one boom microphone. And there's an orchestra. And it was designed, there's a curtain because, of course, all these actors, these performers knew, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, as they knew performing in the Copacabana Club or the Sands Hotel, or their experience was performing in Vegas. And so if I go back a little bit with Jerry Lewis, his parents were both in show business. His father was a comedian, and his mum was in the act as well. And so he was in it as a kid, and they performed in the Catskills. I know so much. Carla's asking me questions, by the way. That's why it's kind of weird. It's not like I'm suddenly thinking of random things. The reason I was obsessed with him is because he was a physical comedian, and that was my hobby, interest, and then at one point my career. Where you are a physical comedian is somebody who kind of verges on being a stuntman. You can do physical comedy, and so he was a physical comedian. That was his shtick, and he's a very interesting character because he was quite disliked. And America is very divided with Jerry Lewis. A lot of people think that he's too. They just don't think he's a very nice person. They just don't really connect with him. And yet other people think he's a genius. So, of course, his early movies, because he was a filmmaker as well, and he was a director and a writer. So you may have seen his early films. So, for example, The Nutty Professor, which was made famous more recently by... what's the actor's name in The Nutty Professor? Eddie Murphy. That is a remake of the Jerry Lewis version. And the Jerry Lewis version came out in the late 50s. And or early 60s, and I mean it's better. The original version with Jerry Lewis is much better than the Eddie Murphy version. The Eddie Murphy version, he's like a fat guy becomes a thin guy, but Jerry Lewis is such a great performer, physical comedian, that he was able to completely change his physicality without a fat suit. And so the character, when he wasn't playing the professor, was Buddy Love. And Buddy Love was this amazing dancing, jazz flute playing womanizer. And so The Nutty Professor really is one of the great kind of early Hollywood movies in Technicolor. And he directed it as well. He wrote it and he directed it. And the other great thing about Jerry Lewis that people don't really know is that he invented video assist, which is where you are able to put a camera inside the film camera and record what the camera is seeing and play it back on a video screen. So these days everyone crowds around the monitor to see what the camera sees. Well, that didn't exist in the 1950s. But as a director, he was quite pioneering. So he wanted to invent something that made it easier for him to be able to perform on stage, on the set, and see his performances back. So he created video assist, which is the way of watching back and seeing live what the movie camera is seeing on a film set. And of course now it's standard. But that was a Jerry Lewis creation. So he's a very interesting guy. He died about 2 or 3 years ago. And he suffered his whole life with very bad back pain because of being, doing physical comedy and landing on his back so many times. And then, of course, there's the famous relationship with him and Dean Martin. Because Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin was in the Rat Pack, right? So Jerry Lewis was in the extended Rat Pack. He was always with those guys, but he was not one of the five. He was always around, and he was in their shows, and he was, part of the thing. So Dean Martin, who was in the Rat Pack, and Jerry Lewis had a double act, and they together were the highest paid performers of their day. And they were the first real kind of megastars of American television. Because you have to remember, they had 3 jobs. They would do, during the day, the morning and the day, they would be filming movies. And then in the evenings, they would go and do the Colgate Comedy Hour, which was a live television show. And then at night, they would go to the hotels and perform. And so these people were working incessantly. Their workload was incredible. And I really do feel like humans were stretched much more back then. I feel like humanity we've become quite sedentary because of computers. And actually the capability of the human, both as a as an acrobat or as an athlete, combined with all of these amazing talents, is when you see people like him perform, it's really quite spectacular. You feel like you're seeing somebody with superhuman skills. And so that's why I went to the theater twice to see him in Damn Yankees, because it was the only chance I ever got to see him live. And it was the single greatest thing I've ever witnessed with my human eyes, to see this guy do what he did. And he was probably in his late 60s when he did it. So, and then, of course, in America, once he stopped doing movies and things, he started to, well, actually, no, this is not true. When he was younger, one of the charities he supported was muscular dystrophy, the US muscular dystrophy. And so he started doing telethons. He effectively invented the telethon on American television. And he would host these telethons for 15 to 20 hours non-stop to raise money for muscular dystrophy. And after he had a famous falling out with Dean Martin, quite early on, he fell out with Dean Martin. They never spoke. And Sean Levy's book really kind of goes into detail on this. It was actually Frank Sinatra at one of these telethons that brought Dean and Jerry back together. And there's a very wonderful YouTube clip of an older Dean Martin and an older Jerry Lewis meeting for the first time in 30 years, courtesy of a reintroduction on live television by Frank Sinatra. And it's very moving because they loved each other so much, they just couldn't work together anymore. Because they were so different. They had such differing skills. Well, I think in America people know that Jerry Lee Lewis and Jerry Lewis are different people. I think in England there's a lot more confusion about that because Jerry Lewis is really not in the culture of British entertainment, even though he did perform in Britain a couple of times. But in America, Jerry Lee Lewis, who of course is the kind of rock and roll legend, has a very different following to Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis is just so famous in England that in America that there's not really that much confusion of those two here. Interestingly. Oh, I went round the back afterwards to go and see him, and I waited. And he slipped out of a door that was not the stage door. It was a few feet to the left, and everyone was crowded around the stage door. This taxi pulled up. He literally slipped out the door, in the cab, and went. And then famously, he also stopped doing the show in the middle of the run. He just disappeared because I think his back was too painful. Very interesting. But he really was one of the greats, I do find it fascinating that, somebody can be so skilled and have to live in the modern world. And the most recent thing that Jerry Lewis did, he did a couple of films about 2 or 3 years ago. He was a wonderful actor as well, wonderful serious actor. There's a few movies that he's in as an older man that I think are wonderful. The best film that he ever did, in my opinion, was not one that he directed. It was directed by Martin Scorsese. And it was, it starred, oh man, it's so difficult. It starred Robert De Niro playing a character called Rupert Pupkin. And Jerry Lewis plays a guy like Jerry Lewis in it, like a Tonight Show host. And Rupert Pupkin is a terrible wannabe comedian who wants to be on the show and doesn't get anywhere and, is always ignored by the show and eventually kidnaps the host. And the recent movie, The Joker, or Joker, with Joaquin Phoenix, is a remake of that movie. So, yeah. So all of these films are kind of remakes of... So Eddie Murphy and The Nutty Professor is a remake of The Nutty Professor with Jerry Lewis. And Joker, that came out about 3 years ago, is a remake of what's the name of the film? I'll just have to look it up. Just take me 1 second here. My recall is not good. I'm just looking up Rupert Pupkin. It's called The King of Comedy, which is the same name, ironically, as the book by Sean Levy. And this is really, very much Jerry Lewis's, his subtitle was The King of Comedy, because he really was. And Martin Scorsese records this very interesting story about how they made that film, because there are scenes where the New York traffic is so bad that Jerry Lewis gets out of his limo and ends up just like walking home after the show, or walking to work, I think, one day. And his character was not called the character that it ended up being called. And he said to Martin Scorsese, "Why don't you make my first name Jerry? Because when I walk down the street, people shout, 'Hey, Jerry,' all the time." And being Martin Scorsese, you can shoot it on a long lens, because, of course, Jerry Lewis is a filmmaker, so he has such a great idea. So he's like, shoot it on a long lens, and I guarantee that you'll get, like, workmen on a building site and people, but Jerry. So they changed his surname in the film, but they kept his first name as Jerry. Sandra Bernhardt is in the film as well. It might be one of the greatest movies you will ever see. I mean, it really is truly, truly magnificent. It's a cult classic now. It's called King of Comedy, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Jerry Lewis. I think I know the movie you're talking about, but I can't remember what it is. With the longest long shot. Yeah. It's a bit of a long shot, isn't it? So yeah, that's a little kind of potted history of Jerry Lewis. So I recommend the movie King of Comedy. The other film that I really like of his, which stars Oliver Platt. I'm a big Oliver Platt fan. You know who he is? He's such a wonderful actor. And it's set in Brighton, weirdly, and Jerry Lewis is in it, and so is Lee Evans. And Lee Evans based his act on Jerry Lewis. Do you know about this? A lot of Brits thought that Lee Evans based his act on Norman Wisdom, and he didn't. He based his act on Jerry Lewis. So, Jerry Lewis really has spawned an awful lot of... I mean, look at... who's the actor from The Truman Show? Jim Carrey. So who is Jim Carrey's inspiration? Who's Jim Carrey based his whole act on? Jerry Lewis. This all goes back to Jerry Lewis. Everything, all of these stories... all of these performances, all of these things go back to Jerry Lewis. And so this is why it's so interesting, because all of these actors will all cite Jerry Lewis as their inspiration. And if you want to see the last thing that Jerry Lewis did before he died, on Netflix, of course, there is the Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee series, right? And Jerry Seinfeld goes over to Jerry Lewis's house in Florida, picks him up, and they go for a drive and they go for a coffee. And they were definitely in a kind of proper 1960s, kind of pimped, the kind of car that apparently it was the car that Jerry Lewis used to drive. But it's one of the most recent episodes, because he died about 6 months after they made that. Excuse me. So it's just very interesting that people, for me anyway, living on the other side of the world to the existence of Jerry Lewis, I became so fascinated and obsessed. But the thing that interested me the most about him is that he was disliked, and that he was a nightmare to work with. And these things I always found really interesting, because he was a perfectionist. He wasn't a bad person, but he was a perfectionist. And, he's one of these people that was interviewed, I think Vice News or someone did an interview with him just a few years ago, and it went so badly It went so badly because they tried to, they just tried to disrespect him. You know, they tried to catch him out. And he's like, what are you doing to me? I'm Jerry Lewis. Like, leave me alone. And I noticed that when Jerry Lewis went on a British morning show. We have a morning show called Good Morning. And again, they just did not give him the respect that he deserved because, you know, he'd been a performer since he was 7 years old. And, you know, at the age of like 85 or something, and having performed at the highest level, the very highest level, but not just as a stand-up, but as a comedian, a director, and a filmmaker, and a writer, and, you know, creative. He's a powerhouse. And to be interviewed like you're just another comedian was very demoralizing for him. And that interview also went very badly. So this is, you know, I've always been very interested in the kind of downfall of entertainers as well as their upside. You know, I've always been very interested in both ends of the clown, both sides of the clown, the happy and the sad. It's very, very interesting to me. And I really feel like we just underestimate the abilities of some of the great comedians who, before the days of computers and CGI, they had to do everything in the camera, everything manually. And, you know, there are some scenes in his old films. The Bellboy was another one of his very most famous films, where he plays a bellboy in a hotel. And that was remade as well. The Bellboy was remade as well with Adam Sandler, I think. And again, Adam Sandler, you know, they all these kind of comedy people, they all reference Jerry Lewis because he was the guy on TV in the 1950s and 60s that had physical comedy covered. That was him. And of course, who inspired Jerry Lewis? Well, it was Chaplin and Keaton and Lloyd, you know, the three great clowns. The silent movies inspired Jerry Lewis, and he took it to television. And so we're talking about a guy who was, you know, probably, in terms of American culture, one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. And yet, you know, and he was very popular in Europe. Like in Paris, he was held as one of these, you know, the great clowns. Because, of course, you know, the French, they have huge respect for cinema, but also for art house pieces. And, you know, Jerry Lewis's typewriter scene, which you can find on YouTube, it's where he mimes a typewriter to a piece of music that has got the sound of a typewriter in it. And the way he hits the keys and mimes to the music. You know, I learned that routine when I was a kid. I watched it over and over again to be able to get the comic timing that he had. So there's a lot to know about this guy. You know, I really feel like he's, you know, it's important that his legacy is not ignored because, you know, his impact on entertainment as a whole was just such a huge, it's just so huge. And here we are now in 2022 and, you know, the guy barely gets a mention now. Tito's joined us, Christy, Susan, Zuo. Thank you for spending your morning with Backchannel. It's 9:29 Pacific, 12:29 Eastern. I'm Anthony Davis. Thank you for joining me. We've been looking at some of the morning papers, and we're talking about Jerry Lewis. How did we get onto him? Oh, baseball. So he was in this show called Damn Yankees, where he played the devil. And do you know, when he came on stage, because he wasn't in the first 20 minutes of the show, he appeared in a puff of smoke as the devil. And I'll never forget seeing it. He got a standing ovation for like 15 minutes. And he didn't even say anything. He just stood there, like grinning. And his stillness just encouraged the audience. And I could see with his hand, because he you know, he had, I'm a little bit like this, you know, very theatrical hands. And so he His little pinky fingers were always acting, always acting like in a little world of their own. And I could see his hand down by his side. And he was using, this is how much skill this guy had, he was using his pinky finger to control, like a baton, the reaction from the crowd. I mean, that is a level of skill that you just don't witness anymore. It's on another level. Carla, did you know anything about this guy at all? I mean, was he on your radar or just not on your radar? You were thinking of Jerry Lee Lewis. I never liked Jerry Lee Lewis, personally. I mean, I appreciate that he was very good at playing, a rock and roll piano and pioneered a generation of music. But I was in the Jerry Lewis camp, So watch King of Comedy. Watch what was the Oliver Platt movie called? With Lee Evans and Jerry. Imagine what it must have been like for Lee Evans to be in a movie with his idol, Jerry Lewis. Think about that. I mean, it's a kind of a weird film, but it's a really wonderful movie. I really, I feel a lot of connection with it. Okay, let's move on with some of these newspapers this morning. Let's go to Augusta, Maine now, and take a look at the Kennebec Journal. National Guard assists with surge. Dozens of Maine Army National Guard members begin arriving at hospitals across the state on Thursday morning to assist in non-clinical roles as doctors and nurses continue to care for unprecedented numbers of COVID-19 patients. In all, 169 Guard members have been dispatched to healthcare facilities this week, including 30 to Maine Medical Center in Portland and 19 to Midcoast Hospital in Brunswick to help blunt the Omicron variant's impact on the state's healthcare system. We are so incredibly grateful that the Guard has joined us here at Maine Medical Center, said Marilyn Flanders, Vice President of Patient Care Services. They're going to be supporting us in room cleaning, making sure the rooms are ready for patients coming in that need our care. They'll also be functioning as companions, so helping have extra eyes on our patients to make sure they can stay safe. I bet the National Guard is thrilled about that, It's like a volunteer army that really just wanted to be able to use their guns, and instead they're going to be cleaning cubicles. Officials, Water Street building is dangerous. They say council hopes move will bring restoration of historic structure. Oh, it's Water Street. Okay. That's a very pretty street, actually. 235 Water Street. It was damaged in a 2015 fire that resulted in the demolition of the building between it and Gerard's Pizza. Good old Gerard's Pizza. Also, Collins votes against reform. Yes, I mean, Susan Collins, she really is one of these quite fascinating senators. I've been to Portland, Maine, by the way, so I know a little bit about the area and her. It says the Democratic push to enhance voting rights protections was blocked in the Senate on Wednesday night as Republicans, including Maine's Senator Susan Collins, voted unanimously to prevent debate on its merits, and Democratic Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Arizona's Kirsten Sinema opposed an effort to circumvent a Republican filibuster. It says here that King noted that former President Trump's efforts to undermine confidence in the 2020 election had convinced 2/3 of Republicans that elections are illegitimate and rigged. I mean, it's like, wow. Still, even now, after all these investigations. And a story about a man intentionally setting 2 houses on fire. So there we go. And a woman holding a sign on the July 13th, 2015 in South Carolina, a Democratic attempt to enhance voting rights failed Wednesday night. I do wish they wouldn't call it a Democratic effort, because it really is nothing to do with the Democrats. It's about the Constitution of the country. It's for everybody. Everybody should want everybody to vote. That is what a democracy is. It's nothing to do with the Democrats. They're the ones bringing forward the legislation because they know the Republicans won't. again, this kind of goes back to my view that Republicans increasingly think that democracy is exclusive to Democrats. Okay, let's move on to the Portland Press Herald now. And they lead with the same image of the troop reinforcements arriving to help strained Maine hospitals. And committee advances equal rights amendment, but the slim majority of support on the Judiciary Committee, 7-5, suggests it might not win the backing of 2/3 of the legislature. This is, an equal rights amendment to the state constitution that would prohibit discrimination based on gender. Yeah, you don't want to vote for that. Yeah, you don't want to vote for that. The unified opposition by the Judiciary Committee's 5 Republican members signals that the proposal faces an uphill battle in the House and Senate, where 2/3 of members must support the measure. Yeah, you don't want to vote on that. Yeah, an amendment to the state constitution that would prohibit discrimination based on gender. You don't want to vote for that. It's like, is it 1955? I feel like I've gone back to the future in Marty McFly's DeLorean time machine. Also, Yarmouth native earns spot on Olympic team. A 2018 graduate of Yarmouth High, Sophia Laukley, has made a meteoric ascent on the World Cup circuit in the past year. And a photograph of her. So that's nice, isn't it? Sun Herald is next from Mississippi. 2 S's, 2 S's, and 2 P's. Do you remember that? Double S, double S, double P. Mississippi. Coastal Mississippi has new director to promote tourism. The search for new executive director for Coastal Mississippi is over with the appointment of Judy Young to promote 3 coast counties as a tourist destination. Her appointment was announced on Thursday morning, about 3 months after former director Milton Segarra resigned after clashing with the Coastal Mississippi Board and Harrison County supervisors. She'll start on the 1st of February. Medical marijuana moves one step closer in Mississippi. Yes, Mississippi is moving closer to joining most other states in allowing people to use marijuana to relieve medical conditions, including COVID, from some recent studies as well. So I don't know whether there's any truth to that, but it was certainly reported. The State House voted 104-14 on Wednesday to pass a bill that will create medical marijuana program. You see, they'll pass a bill for weed, but they won't pass a bill for gender equality. It's like, pick one. You know, it's very funny to me. It's very funny to me. What's more important, women's rights, the voices of women, or getting high with a fake medical marijuana card so that you can purchase it legally? The bill passed the Senate House 46-5 last week. The House made some changes. In the coming days, the Senate could accept the changes or seek negotiations. Republican Governor Tate Reeves said he wants even tighter limits on how much marijuana a patient could buy because he doesn't want a medical program to turn into a recreational one. Also, ruling allows January 6 panel to get Trump documents. In a rebuff to former President Donald Trump, the Supreme Court is allowing the release of presidential documents sought by the Congressional Committee investigating January 6 insurrection. The justices on Wednesday rejected a bid by Trump to withhold the documents. Do you know, I was looking at an interview with Trump's new attorney, because you know he can't get anyone to represent him because nobody wants to. He's been through most of the good lawyers and they've all quit or he's fired them. And so he met this girl, this quite young woman, very attractive, obviously, at some event in Florida. And she's obviously a staunch Trump supporter and right-wing fanatic. And obviously he got kind of excited about her and said, right, you're representing me. And she's got no experience. She's got minimal experience. And so now she is his lawyer. And she was kind of a tour de force, you know. I really was kind of impressed with her attitude. I don't agree with anything that she said. She was talking specifically about Letitia James, the Attorney General, who, is taking this case against the Trump Organization. And, she was making the case that Letitia James has a personal vendetta because Letitia James, and I agree, foolishly has been saying stuff on TV like, I'm going to get him, they're a crime family, I'm going to make it my life's work to bring them down. I mean, if you work for the Justice Department, you really shouldn't use language like that. But it's not against the law, but there's a good chance it could prejudice the case against the Trump organization because Letitia James has been so outspoken about wanting to bring this family down. This is like an American screenplay, isn't it? That kind of language is the stuff you hear in the movies. Like in Batman, you'd hear the Attorney General go, I'm going to get that Joker and I'm going to bring him down, and it's like, wow, this on the steps of the courthouse. It's like a scene out of a film. And yet this is how it happens. It's very interesting. Anyway, so Trump's new lawyer, this young, sprightly, energized, politicized, her name's Hubba, I think. Hubba. I think that's her surname. Anyway, she's now, the one who's going to try and keep Trump out of prison. And there's a lot of secret chatter now amongst Trump's friends, I've read, that suggests that people are worried that because she's willing to tell him anything he wants to hear, he's sticking with her rather than a lawyer that might be like, give it up, man. You don't have a hope in hell. Because, he sues people daily. He just loves it. He doesn't win, but he sues. He likes to announce it. It's very theatrical. So that's the ruling that allows the January 6th panel to get Trump documents. Apparently he writes on Post-it notes. That's how he communicates with his staff. He doesn't use a computer. He doesn't use a smartphone. He writes in felt pen on Post-it notes. And these Post-it notes have been archived at the National Archives. I mean, it's so interesting. I find everything interesting. It's probably my most favorite phrase. If you were to play back these shows, you'll hear me say, it's very interesting to me. Because I'm genuinely interested. I'm like a sponge for this kind of stuff. And of course, also on the front of the Sun Herald this morning, they talk about the fact that Ivanka, his wife/daughter, has been also asked to talk to the U.S. Capitol Insurrection Committee. They're asking her to voluntarily cooperate with its probe. They sent a letter on Thursday requesting a meeting in early February, asking to discuss her father's actions, including a telephone call they say she witnessed as he tried to pressure then-President Mike Pence to reject the 2020 election results, among other issues, because she was an advisor to the president. And then finally, shelters opening ahead of weather advisories. Hancock and Harrison counties have opened up weather shelters ahead of the weekend's anticipated cold temperatures. So there we go. That's what's happening on the Sun Herald. Let's continue. Let us continue. Is it Habba? Habba. It's fascinating, isn't it? You learn a lot on this show, I tell you. I mean, there's very good value. This program is very good value. The downside for me, though, is that I have to do an awful lot of reading. And just reading constantly, People are like, why are you always on your phone? It's like I'm literally uploading data from my phone into my short-term memory. I love it. I find it, we should all really make the effort to know everything about everything as best we can. Really just read. It's so helpful. I think I do know who Larry Hogan is. Don't tell me. Yeah, he's the governor of Maryland, yeah. That's right, yeah. Well, Trump running again is all down to two things, isn't it? It's whether he gets the nomination from the Republican Party, and currently he's fallen out with Mitch McConnell, and that's a necessary relationship. But secondly, it's about whether or not he gets convicted or
It's Friday, January 21. From the Volley Network, this is your daily U.S. news update. I'm Anthony Davis. The U.S. House of Representatives panel investigating the deadly January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol on Thursday requested an interview with former U.S. President Donald Trump's daughter and White House aide, Trump. In a letter, lawmakers said they were seeking her voluntary cooperation as part of their ongoing probe and would limit their questions to issues relating to events surrounding that day, including activities leading up to or influencing it and her role in the White House at that time. The panel noted she was present in the Oval Office during key conversations leading up to January 6 and observed a telephone conversation between her father and former Vice President Mike Pence on the morning of the Capitol attack. Donald Trump had attempted to persuade Pence to reject the results of the election. Meanwhile, the prosecutor for Georgia's biggest county on Thursday requested a special grand jury with subpoena power to aid her investigation into then-President Trump's efforts to influence the U.S. state's 2020 election results. In a letter to Fulton County's chief judge, District Attorney Fani Willis wrote that multiple witnesses being probed have refused to cooperate absent a subpoena requiring their testimony. The investigation is the most serious probe facing Trump in Georgia after he was recorded in a phone call pressuring Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to overturn the state's election results based on unfounded claims of voter fraud. Your daily U.S. news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your It's Friday, January 21. From the Volley Network, this is your daily U.S. news update. I'm Anthony Davis. The U.S. House of Representatives panel investigating the deadly January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol on Thursday requested an interview with former U.S. President Donald Trump's daughter and White House aide, Ivanka Trump. In a letter, lawmakers said they were seeking her voluntary cooperation as part of their ongoing probe and would limit their questions to issues relating to events surrounding that day, including activities leading up to or influencing it and her role in the White House at that time. The panel noted she was present in the Oval Office during key conversations leading up to January 6 and observed a telephone conversation between her father and former Vice President Mike Pence on the morning of the Capitol attack. Donald Trump had attempted to persuade Pence to reject the results of the election. Meanwhile, the prosecutor for Georgia's biggest county on Thursday requested a special grand jury with subpoena power to aid her investigation into then-President Trump's efforts to influence the U.S. state's 2020 election results. In a letter to Fulton County's chief judge, District Attorney Fani Willis wrote that multiple witnesses being probed have refused to cooperate absent a subpoena requiring their testimony. The investigation is the most serious probe facing Trump in Georgia after he was recorded in a phone call pressuring Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to overturn the state's election results based on unfounded claims of voter fraud. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. It's Friday, January 21. From the Volley Network, this is your daily U.S. news update. I'm Anthony Davis. The U.S. House of Representatives panel investigating the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol on Thursday requested an interview with former U.S. President Donald Trump's daughter and White House aide Ivanka Trump. In a letter, lawmakers said they were seeking her voluntary cooperation as part of their ongoing probe and would limit their questions to issues relating to events surrounding that day, including activity.
(9:57) Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. On the West Coast, I'm in Los Angeles. Carla's producing from London, England. And whoever you are, wherever you are, Paula, I know, is with us. And thank you very much, Paula. Much appreciated. Stacey as well. So thanks for spending your time with us today and every day, in fact, because we have a growing list of shows that is effectively keeping you entertained throughout the day and across the week, including Haley and Allison Live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs and their one-star cinema review. Or Live Every Day with Liv Harrison, live from Texas, celebrating the little things in life with plenty of coffee. Or what about the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, whose program Your Pal Hal directly follows this show at 11 a.m. Pacific. That's 2 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, I'm Anthony Davis, and we are looking through the morning papers this morning. We've been kind of zigzagging around the U.S. We've been to Portland, Maine. We've been to Biloxi in Mississippi. Should we go to Greenwood, Mississippi? I don't think we've done that one yet. You know, that's a good one. The headline, Melton's persisting in spill dispute. Landowners still waiting for their day in court. Yes, this is after toxic chemicals were dumped onto farmland north of Greenwood, and its owners are still looking for their day in court. Sampling Greenwood, a photograph of three women, actually like six women. In fact, two pictures of three women each and a picture of a man. The layout on this newspaper is fascinating. I can't kind of work out what's happening here. It says the Greenwood-Lear-Flor County Chamber of Commerce held its 2022 Chamber Honors Annual Meeting and Taste of Greenwood on Thursday. That sounds delicious. The gathering also included an expo spotlighted a number of Greenwood businesses and a social hour. Those attending included, and then photographs of all these women doing their thing, looking amazing. The photograph of the guy is Sylvester Hoover unveiling a refurbished blues sign displayed in the Baptist Town neighborhood of Greenwood on Thursday. The sign depicts guitarist David Honeyboy Edwards, actor Morgan Freeman, and blues musician Robert Johnson, whose face is blotted out since Hoover does not own the rights to the picture. That's so funny. It's so funny. This is the Greenwood Commonwealth. It's so funny. They've unveiled... I mean, why wouldn't you just choose a different picture? They literally have built this fantastic sign, Welcome to the Historical Baptist Town, but they can't have a photograph of Robert Johnson because they don't own the rights to the picture. It's just brilliant. You literally couldn't make this stuff up. It's almost like it's an April Fool's. I love it. Well done, Sylvester Hoover. That really is a refurbished blues sign. Refurbished so much that the guy's got no face. A mix of online in-person classes okay, board says. It says Mississippi schools are allowed to use a combination of in-person and online classes to try to slow the spread of COVID-19. The State Board of Education voted Thursday to authorize hybrid scheduling through at least March 11. The authorization could be extended if cases are still spreading rapidly in the state, according to a State Department of Education news release. And here's an interesting subject, one that I find completely fascinating. The headline is Critical Race Theory Ban Goes to Senate. Yes, a Mississippi Senate committee on Thursday advanced a bill that would ban schools from teaching critical race theory, even though the state superintendent of education has said the theory is not being taught in schools. And legislators have offered no evidence to show it is. I mean, you know what the tragedy of this is? Is that this is Mississippi. This is... Oh, you're still enjoying the sign. I know. He has got a black bin liner in his hand. I'm going to screen grab this because I think it's such a great story, and I'll post it on my Twitter. Here we go. I mean, this is the stuff that we live for, isn't it? These types of stories. It's just genius. There we go. I'm grabbing that capture. There we go. Oh, it made a little noise. Ping, ping. Love it. Okay. So good. It's so good. I might. Should I put it on my Twitter now, just for fun? Because I mean, it's like I'm going to do it now because you just wonder sometimes whether or not. I just think it's important to share. If you find something good, then just share it. You know. It's almost beggars belief, isn't it? You know? It's almost beggars belief. Where did it go? What did I even do with it? Hi Norbert, hi Luna, hi Paula. Thank you for joining us here on Backchannel. Great to know you're part of the show. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I mean, what I was saying earlier is, I'm trying to. I mean, this is almost an impossibility for somebody with my technical ability. But what I'm trying to do is screenshot something off the bottom of the newspaper from Mississippi, which is very difficult. You know, when you're this age, I can't even. I'm going to have to do it later. I can't. It's too complicated. It's too complicated. This is from the Greenwood Commonwealth, and it's a piece of work. It really is. I'll try one last time because I mean this is, you know. This is why it's nice to have the music. This is why it's nice to have the music. Yeah, but I can't multitask. I don't have those kind of skills. You know me. It's impossible. Okay, I'm just gonna airdrop it to myself. I can't work anything out. So what I wanted to say, because you know we're talking about critical race theory and this bill, and what I wanted to say is that the sadness is that this newspaper is from Mississippi, which is like one of the kind of central focal places of the civil rights movement and the police brutality and the Ku Klux Klan and all of this stuff, right? Mississippi, and yet the Senate has advanced a bill that would ban schools from teaching critical race theory. Even though it's not a thing and it doesn't exist, it's a module that's done at university level, it's just very tragic to me that this particular state is the scene of this controversy. Senate Bill 2113 passed the Senate Education Committee after a short discussion, and it moves to the full Senate for more work. Critical race theory is an academic framework that examines how racism has shaped public policy and institutions, such as the legal system, and how those who have perpetuated the dominance of white people in society. Republicans across the country have been raising money for months by saying critical race theory is a threat, and multiple GOP-led states have banned or limited the teaching of critical race theory or similar concepts through laws or administrative actions. The bill that passed the Mississippi Senate Education Committee says no school, community college, or university should teach that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. Are we living in Russia? Is that what this is? We're living in Russia? It feels like it, doesn't it? Anyway, the bill's top sponsor is Senator Michael McLendon, a white Republican from Hernando. There we are. There it is. Okay, let's move on. The Arizona Republic is next. They lead with budget proposals for prisons hits record. Cinema feels heat over filibuster vote, and a photograph of Kirsten Sinema. She always wears such really very interesting clothes, doesn't she? She's like a very stylish person. All style and no substance. It says her liberal donors, congressional colleagues, and left-leaning Arizona constituents say she crossed a line this week that will cost President Joe Biden's agenda, American democracy, and her own electoral prospects for years to come. Her vote siding with Republicans and one other centrist Democrat to maintain the U.S. Senate's legislative filibuster helped kill Democrats' push for voting rights legislation late on Wednesday night. Carla, did you see what happened on the Senate floor with her once the bill failed? Did you see what happened? They zoomed in on it. She high-fived a bunch of Republicans. And was just hanging out with all the Republicans down the bottom left. Meanwhile, all the Democrats were just like ignoring her and leaving, and she was literally high-fiving Republicans. She's not even seeking to hide her allegiance. It came after she reiterated on the Senate floor that she wouldn't change filibuster rules for President Joe Biden. She said she supports both social spending and the voting rights bill, but that is of little consequence to a growing sliver of her support base who view her support for a 60-vote filibuster as halting Democratic plans. Let's go to the Daily Courier now. They lead with, this is the newspaper for Prescott, Arizona. Draft Granite Creek Corridor plan under review by city commissions that aims to encourage development, economic development, new development, and redevelopment along the Granite Creek Corridor. So that's the Daily Courier. Let's move on because I want to get through these. The Gazette this morning for Iowa, eastern Iowa. UI's old Capitol Dome will get new gold this summer. Oh, that's great. Finally, it's got a flaking dome. Opioid deaths driven by fentanyl up in Iowa. Yes, increasingly driven by fentanyl. It says opioid-related deaths continue to surge in Iowa and across the country at a shocking rate, the Attorney General Tom Miller said on Thursday. No, I did not see that. Let me scroll back to that. That was the Daily Courier. Okay, the Daily Courier, this is for Arizona. The Arizona Senate Committee votes to allow concealed weapons on college campuses. I mean, I'm just like, I can barely keep it together sometimes, Carla, when you read these headlines. Critical race theory banned in Mississippi, and then the Senate Committee voting to allow concealed weapons on college campuses. It says, insisting it will make students safer. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted on Thursday to let anyone with a permit to carry a concealed weapon bring it on to university and college campuses, including classrooms and dorms. The move came as Republican lawmakers on the panel rejected arguments by Michael Thompson, the chief of police of Arizona State University, who told them that SB 1123 is a bad idea. My goodness me. The chief of police says it's a bad idea. Common sense says it's a bad idea. I'm here to tell you from first-hand experience, the university students make very poor decisions on a daily basis, sometimes hourly basis, he said. Adding guns to an already high-risk environment of alcohol, drugs, overreaction, lack of experience, and immaturity is a very dangerous combination. And Thompson, who's been the ASU police chief since 2014, said, it doesn't even take into account mental health issues and students who are considering suicide. But Senator Wendy Roberts, the sponsor of the measure, said his objections and those of lobbyists for the universities ignore. See page 5. I mean, it's just, I'm stunned. I'm literally I'm speechless, which YouTube will be very happy about. Okay, let's go back to the Gazette this morning for Eastern Iowa. They say some UI courses go online despite rules, with COVID-19 cases surging in Iowa as students return to its public universities for the spring semester. The University of Iowa Graduate Student Union is urging members to move all courses they're teaching online for the first 2 weeks, despite a UI policy barring such action without permission. And the Des Moines Register, they lead with, on the front line as COVID surge rages, overworked, numb healthcare workers soldier on. Oh, man. I do not envy these people working in these jobs. And a photograph of a registered respiratory therapist, Myra Bloom, at the end of a 12-hour shift at Unity Point's Iowa Methodist Medical Center. She said it's not uncommon to have logged more than 7 miles of walking on her shift. Reynolds raises nearly $4 million. Governor expected to launch re-election campaign this spring. Iowa Democrat Deirdre DeGear has just $8,500 in the bank, and she mounts a campaign against Republican Kim Reynolds and her $4.8 million war chest. Wow. I mean, it really is, the dollar really does talk in this country, doesn't it? You know? The dollar really does talk. And $9 million program aims to recruit teachers. This is pressure to address the teacher demographics in Iowa. It's mounting as the state students' population continues to diversify. So there we go. We've got 3 left. Should we, let's just see what you're saying, because, I mean, there's always a lot of messages on this subject. Norbert and Luna and Paula, thank you. So many people joining in and wanting to be part of this program. Very grateful for it. Keep it up. If you want to have your say at any point, you have the right of reply. So just wake up your device, say the word say, and then your message. Or just go online to backchannel.tv. Okay. Where are we now? I am moving to the Chicago Tribune. January 6 panel calls on Ivanka Trump. House committee reaches out about riot conversations. I was looking at Ivanka Trump on television yesterday. I've never seen another human that looks like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, she actually looks unreal. I think it's the combination of the teeth that she wears and like a mini chin or something. I find her physicality fascinating. I almost feel like if I saw her in the flesh, she might not look like that. It's almost like she's made for television. Also, analysis, Chicago third in diesel pollution deaths. It says people around the world breathed cleaner air after the economy ground to a halt during the early days of the pandemic. But Chicago and its suburbs missed out on the temporary reprieve from lung-damaging, life-shortening pollution. Isn't it funny? We seem to have forgotten about pollution. We're so obsessed with COVID-19 that particulate from vehicles seems to have been put to one side. Of course it shouldn't, and it's still a killer, but fundamentally, we don't really hear about it much anymore. It said a new analysis suggests a key reason why dirty air problems continued here while other cities saw clear skies for the first time in years. Pollution from diesel trucks and locomotives barely change in the Chicago area, one of the nation's major freight hubs. The toll from breathing diesel pollution is staggering in the metropolitan area that stretches from Kenosha to Naperville to Gary. 340 people are expected to die next year from diseases triggered or made worse by exposure to soot emitted by diesel engines. Well, there's a very simple solution to this. They could do what the Mayor of London has done, and they, put in effectively a clean air policy where vehicles that emit certain levels of particulate are not allowed to enter the metropolis. They're just not allowed in. It seems totalitarian, but the air quality in London has improved significantly. They call it the low emissions zone, and it extends right around the outside of the city, the LEZ. And so you have to pay, if you've got an emitting vehicle, you have to pay quite a lot of money. It's like £100 or something to enter the city to do your deliveries. But we'll talk about electric cars in just a minute, and that will continue, from going particulate to zero emissions. I have two electric cars. One of my electric cars actually has has a sticker on it. It's like an embossed, raised emblem, and it says zero emissions on both sides, and I'm very proud of that. I've got another microphone arriving today. I'm being ticked off by the producer now. Thinks that I've effectively I've erased my micro-carbon footprint with all of the garbage that I buy, my collections and various things. You may be right. I'm not saying anything. I'm just trying to emit less. Teen truckers, U.S. to allow younger semi-drivers in test program. This is a story from Detroit, from the Journal Gazette, Times, and Courier. And it says currently truckers who cross state lines must be at least 21 years old. But an apprenticeship program required by Congress to help ease supply chain logs would let 18 to 20-year-old truckers drive outside their home states. I mean, there's so much here. What have we heard today? We've heard ban critical race theory in Mississippi, even though it doesn't exist. We've found in Arizona they're allowing kids to carry guns in universities, and now they're saying that 18-year-olds can drive trucks. I mean, this is insane. These are just local news stories from local newspapers. It says the pilot program derailed recently in a proposed regulation from the Safety Motor Carrier Safety Administration would screen the teens, barring any with driving while impaired violations or traffic tickets for causing a crash. But safety advocates say the program runs counter to data showing that younger drivers get in more crashes than older ones. They say it's unwise to let teenage drivers be responsible for rigs that can weigh 80,000 pounds and cause catastrophic damage when they hit lighter vehicles. Oh man. I saw a crash 2 days ago up here. Now I didn't see it in the flesh. I actually saw it. Someone posted it online and I saw it, and I know that street because I drive it every day. And it's a downhill and it's very fast and it's on a bend and people drive too fast. And somebody driving one of these huge trucks with a cab up front, and it had an open drop load back to it. He crashed into the side and he flipped it on its nose. So the cab that he was driving went face down and the whole thing flipped over. It reminded me in the Batman movie they shot in Chicago, I think, a truck turning completely over on itself. And it happened on the street right here. And in the video, the driver is thrown out of the cab and he gets up and walks away. And I was like, how is that possible? His cab was completely crushed. I mean, please never drive faster than the speed limit. It really isn't necessary. You know, when you see people drive really fast and then you see them again at the next traffic lights, because ultimately that speeding didn't get them where they wanted to go any quicker, because you're just like adjacent to them once again, even though you were doing 30. I mean, this is my point. It's like you genuinely don't get anywhere quicker by speeding. You just endanger life. The Apprenticeship pilot program was required by Congress as part of the infrastructure bill signed into law November 15. It requires the FMCSA, which is part of the Transportation Department, to start the program within 60 days. So there we go. I mean, you know my opinion on this. It's just like, really? Really? I just don't get it. I mean, the decisions that people seem to make here, where it's like, yeah, you know, I won't go into it because it's too frustrating. Okay, let's move on because we've got so much to get through here. Let's go to the Journal-Star in Peoria, Illinois. And they lead with company behind Peoria COVID test sites faked results, complaint said. Well, this is interesting. This is off the back of the that kind of fraudulent COVID-19 place that we were talking about a couple of days ago. The Minnesota Attorney General's office filed a consumer protection lawsuit on Wednesday against a nationwide chain of coronavirus testing sites for deceptive and fraudulent practices. I mean, it's another thing. It's another thing that is so crazy you couldn't imagine that it might be true. Who would set up fake testing shops? Who? What kind of a person does that? The suit alleges the Illinois-based Center for COVID Control and its primary lab, Doctors Clinical Lab, collected samples from Minnesotans for coronavirus testing, but either failed to deliver test results or delivered test results that were false or inaccurate. The company and its lab provide inaccurate and deceptive test result information to Minnesota consumers and have fraudulently reported negative test results to consumers that never completed COVID-19 tests, according to the complaint. Some test results listed the wrong test type, and false dates and times for when samples were collected from consumers, the complaint says. I mean, it just blows my mind. In the Peoria area, there were 3 locations previously listed on the company's website. The Center for COVID Control is owned and or managed by Illinois residents Akbar Saeed and Alaya Siaj. The complaint says in recent months the couple has purchased a number of luxury vehicles and a $1.36 million mansion. Who does that? Just the moral and ethical direction of this thinking. Because all you do if you go into a venture like this is how can we make as much money as possible? That's all you think about. You don't think about healthcare. You don't think about safety in the community. You don't think about the pandemic. You don't think about the moral obligation. And this is what I've often said about healthcare in America. It doesn't exist. It's the Wild West. Man. I mean, what if this was England? I hate to keep talking about England, but if this was England, they'd just call the police and arrest these 2 people straight away. Immediately just arrest these people because it's obvious. And then they'll get their day in court. But fundamentally, it's like, where it doesn't say anything about what's happened to them. It just says they've sent them a letter. Are they still operating? Are they still allowed to operate? And finally, Biden issues new warning to Russia, says he's made stance on Ukraine clear to Putin. Well, he certainly didn't make it clear in a press conference the other day when he misspoke, and that caused an insane amount of backtracking by the press office. Okay. I think we're done there on the old newspapers, because we do want to talk about this natural history story, don't we? The ivory-billed woodpecker. I do like a woodpecker. I'm actually I'm a bit of a fan because, you know, I hear them around here all the time. Knock, knock, knocking. And why they can't use the doorbell. But my children love it as well. Anyway, this one particular one is the ivory-billed woodpecker. And it says that scientists have been searching for the bird ever since a kayaker apparently spied one in 2004. Yes, this week the US government declared the ivory-billed woodpecker and 22 species extinct. They were officially removed from the endangered species list because they hadn't been documented in the wild for many years. The loss of the species was hailed by many as a consequence of human population growth and the attendant loss of natural habitats and growth in pollution, as well as the climate crisis. But the move was also questioned by some experts who say it's too soon to remove the protections that come with the endangered designation. And it's possible that some of the species could still pop up again, like the biblical Lazarus rising from the dead. So scientists have been on the hunt for this woodpecker ever since a kayaker spied one in the southern swamps in 2004. I mean, if I was to go kayaking, which would never happen incidentally, because you'll barely get me on a Greyhound bus, I would not go to a place called the Southern Swamps. Not for me. Not for me. Millions of dollars have been spent on searches and, just as importantly for many other species, preserving the bird's potential habitat. The ivory-billed woodpecker is an icon and a representative of the major old-growth forests of the southeast. John Fitzpatrick, a biologist who authored a study that claimed the bird had been rediscovered in eastern Arkansas, told the Associated Press. There's been no definitive sightings of this woodpecker since 1944. I'll be honest, I think they should just give it up. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, just chill out on the old woodpecker searching. There's other woodpeckers. I don't mean that, of course. The Wildlife Service says that delisting the woodpecker and the 22 other species, including a fruit bat, birds from the Pacific Islands, and freshwater mussels, frees up resources to devote to species that may still recover from threats. Well, this is what I mean. I just mean if you haven't seen it since 1944, then maybe it's time to give it up. Because conservation is expensive. Joe Biden is yet to nominate a director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, though he did request more than $60 million increase for endangered species, the largest increase requested for the program in history. The woodpecker was like, wow, $60 million? I'm coming out of hibernation. For that much money? I'll show up, even in the swampy rapids if necessary. Okay, so there we go. That's the woodpecker story. I wonder if you're a woodpecker fan, Oh, there's a quiz. I do love a quiz. Okay, so let's find that. Where's the quiz? Where do I find the quiz? Yeah, I want everything. Yeah. This is very interesting. We're going to do a woodpecker quiz, because scientists have been searching for this bird ever since a kayaker spied one in 2004. Can we be sure it's ever really gone? Is the question. So we're gonna get involved in this together. Do you know of all of the things, I really like a woodpecker quiz. Okay. I'm competitive too. I'm like the quiz master now. I used to be a quiz show host on the television. It was 21 years ago that I last hosted a quiz. This is very exciting for me. Okay, here we go. Let's see what I can do with. Oh, there's some audio playing. What is that? Oh, it's like an advert. What is that? There we go. He's gone now. Ah! Where is this guy coming from? There we go. Okay, so what we're looking at here is certain types of birds are more common than others, like the American robin and the northern cardinal, but others are entirely unique to a particular state or region, like New Mexico's roadrunner or South Dakota's nick-pegged ring-necked pheasant. So we're going to look at the every official state bird in the U.S., including the nation's capital. So which bird do you think is the official bird of Alabama? That's the question. The official bird of Alabama. If you think you know, you can wake up your device, say, and then your answer. So I'll give you a few states. We've got Alabama, we've got Alaska, and we've got Arizona. Right? I've got 3 birds here. Which of the birds goes with which state? Answers on a postcard addressed. I don't even know what the California bird is. Let me have a little look here. I'll scroll down. Oh, that's interesting. It's a quail. The California quail. Who knew? It's plump, and it's intricate looking, and it's smaller than a pigeon. Well, most things are. It says these birds, replete with black plumes extending from their heads, spend most of their time on the ground, though they've been known to fly in emergencies. Became the state bird in 1931. Oh, you know the Ohio answer? Well, no cheating, Carla. No cheating. So we're asking for the names of the national birds or the state birds of Alabama, Alaska, and Arizona. And I'll give you a clue. They can all fly. I'll wait. Norbert? Luna? Paula? Anyone? Beulah? What is the state bird of Florida? Should we have a little look? Oh, wow. That's kind of interesting. It's the northern mockingbird, which is ironic considering that Ron DeSantis is often mocking his constituents. Maybe I should just read all the answers out because it's kind of nice, you know? It's like a really nice... So Alabama is the yellowhammer. It's otherwise known as the northern flicker. It is the most beautiful bird you've ever seen, until I start talking about the next one. In Alaska, they have the willow ptarmigan. Interesting. That's a funny-looking bird. It looks like a pheasant without any feathers. Arizona has the cactus wren. You know, wren is a little bird, and this is the cactus wren. It sits on top of cactuses, or cacti. No one says cactuses. What am I talking about? Arkansas has the mockingbird. California has the quail, as we said. Colorado has the lark bunting. I mean, I'd love to know how these birds get these jobs. And what kind of salary are they on? Because they must be cleaning up. You know, do they have to share it amongst their species, or is it just like a buyout? Connecticut has a very beautiful bird called the American robin. Delaware, well, that's where Joe Biden's from. The blue hen chicken. I don't know. That's not an attractive bird, I'll be honest. It looks like it really does not look. It's got like turkey neck and everything. In Washington, D.C., the wood thrush is the bird. Florida, as I said, has the northern mockingbird. Georgia, the brown thrasher. That's a lovely looking bird, actually, the brown thrasher. I think I've seen those around here. Hawaii has the nane, which is the Hawaiian goose. Idaho has the mountain bluebird. And it's like electric blue. Vividly colored. Plentiful in the Idaho mountains, preferring open and airy habitats. You know the bird that I see the most here in California? Well, there's two, actually. I see the gray dove, or maybe it's called the blue dove. They're like nice-looking pigeons. They're like gray pigeons. So I see a lot of them, and I also see a lot of crows, up here in the hills especially, and I also see the blue jay. The blue jay is everywhere, and that is a beautiful, fascinating bird. Do you know I also have a bit of a phobia of birds as well? Did you know this? I have like a bird phobia. Well, a couple of times a bird has flown into the house, and I literally freak out. Like I go and lock myself in the bathroom until like someone's removed it. I cannot be in the same room as a bird. I don't mind looking at them from a distance or seeing them in a tree. But the moment you take a bird that's supposed to live outside and you put it inside a house, my brain just cannot compute that. A bird in a house. It's very confusing to me. It's terrifying. Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, if it's dead, that's one thing, right? But a living flying bird in a house. I actually had a hummingbird fly in once, because there's a lot of hummingbirds here. And a hummingbird flew in, and sadly it died because it couldn't find the exit. Because you know hummingbirds, if they don't feed in 30 minutes, they die. A bit like me. You know, unless there's like a little snack on the go, forget it. Illinois has the northern cardinal, which is an amazing thing, you know, red cardinal. Indiana has the northern cardinal, nearly. Iowa has the eastern goldfinch. And Kansas, the western meadowlark. It's like a yellow bird. Kentucky, the northern cardinal. Louisiana has the brown pelican. That's interesting. The pelican I've always found the pelican to be remarkable. Just the size of it. Some of them are gigantic. I also see hawks up here as well, you know, to see a hawk like doing its thing, circling, and that's kind of exciting. I see a lot of those here as well. In Maine, they have the black-capped chickadee. And in Maryland, the Baltimore oriole. Massachusetts has the black-capped chickadee. Michigan has the American robin. And Minnesota has the common loon. Mississippi, the northern mockingbird. And Missouri, the eastern bluebird. Wow, these birds are so beautiful. I wish you could see these pictures. I mean, really, if we had the technology, we should be flashing these images up on the screen, you know? But the names kind of describe them enough. Nebraska has the western meadowlark. And Nevada, the mountain bluebird. New Hampshire, the purple finch. Am I doing all 50 states now? Because this is gonna take me to the end of the show. New Jersey has the eastern goldfinch. New Mexico has the roadrunner. The roadrunner. I thought that only existed in animation. Turns out it's a real thing. New York has the eastern bluebird. North Carolina has the northern cardinal. The cardinal shows up a few times here. The scissor-tailed flycatcher in Oklahoma. That is a very beautiful bird. Now, Carla, did you know, I'm sure you did because I think we mentioned it on the show, that all of these birds are the remnants, leftovers, and descendants of the dinosaurs. Did you know that? This is the bird community. The birds are the closest thing we have to dinosaurs still on the planet. Not lizards, birds. I can't really top a statistic like that, so we might move on. Well, let's talk about the electric car, because this is one of my favorite subjects, even though Carla's going to kind of berate me for contradicting my carbon footprint. I'm doing my best. I'm just doing my best. You know? I can only do my best. It says some of the first cars ever were electric as designers experimented with a variety of different power sources, though admittedly they were more concerned with developing a working car than any particularly environmental benefits. Electric vehicles first appeared in the mid-19th century, back when people wore high hats and streets were mainly lit by gas lamps. The first known electric car was powered by galvanic cells. It's like early batteries. And there's a very good documentary, which is on Amazon Prime, if you would be interested in this story, called Who Killed the Electric Car? And I really do recommend it. It's a very good documentary. And it basically talks about how General Motors, you know, in the 1980s and 90s, came up with a very excellent, working, affordable electric car. And because of the lobbying of the oil and gas industries, they shelved it. There is actually one here in the Peterson Viet Car Museum. But when people say, oh, you know, I'm not sure about electric cars and, you know, it's all this new technology, I'm like, the electric car is 100 years old, you know? And it's only now that obviously the battery technology is better and the range is better. But, you know, get with the program. You could have had one of these decades ago. Is this the story on the EnergyGov site that you want me to do? It says whether it's a hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or all-electric, the demand for electric drive vehicles will continue to climb as prices drop and consumers look for ways to save money at the pump. Currently, more than 3% of new vehicle sales, electric vehicle sales, could grow to nearly 7%, or 6.6%, or 6.6 million each year worldwide. I think it's more than that now. I think that's a couple of years old, that statistic. But with this growing interest in electric vehicles, here is some history, a little bit of history. Because it's hard to pinpoint the invention of the electric car to one inventor or country. Instead, it was a series of breakthroughs, from the battery to the electric motor in the 1800s, that led to the first electric vehicle on the road. Well, in the early part of the century, innovators in Hungary, the Netherlands, and the United States, including a blacksmith from Vermont, began toying with the concept of a battery-powered vehicle and created some of the first small-scale electric cars. And while Robert Anderson, a British inventor, developed the first crude electric carriage around the same time, it wasn't until the second half of the 19th century that the French and English inventors built some of the first practical electric vehicles. And here in the US, the first successful electric car made its debut at around 1890, thanks to William Morrison, a chemist who lived in Des Moines. His six-passenger vehicle, capable of a top speed of 14 miles an hour, was little more than an electrified wagon. But it helped spark interest in electric vehicles. And over the next few years, electric vehicles from different automakers began popping up across the US. New York City even had a fleet of more than 60 electric taxis. And by 1900, electric cars were at their heyday, accounting for around a third of vehicles on the road. And during the next 10 years, they continued to show strong growth. What? What? Have you noticed the new light behind me? I was just looking at that. Look. See that? What do you think about that? It's like the Jesus effect. It's like the halo effect. It's giving me an outline. It's giving me an outline. Look. Tricks of the trade. Yeah, it's an excuse so I can wear black. Yeah. Look, there it is. It's like it's my wireless charging device. If I start to fall asleep, I just lean back and I just get charged up again. Very clever. So yes, the early rise and fall of the electric car. To understand the popularity of electric vehicles circa 1900, it's also important to understand the development of the personal vehicle and other options available. At the turn of the 20th century, the horse was still the primary mode of transportation. Yes, I kept my horse tied up outside my apartment, and I was like, this is never going to catch on. But as Americans became more prosperous, they turned to the newly invented motor vehicle, available in steam, gasoline, or electric versions to get around. Steam was a tried and true energy source, having proved reliable for powering factories and trains. Some of the first self-propelled vehicles in the late 1700s relied on steam, yet it took until 1870 for the technology to take hold in cars. Part of this is because steam wasn't very practical for personal vehicles. Steam vehicles required long startup times, sometimes up to 45 minutes in the cold, and would need to be refilled with water, limiting their range. So as electric vehicles came onto the market, so did a new type of vehicle. Yes. I mean, I really feel, just to digress just for a second, that, we could make more of the history of electric vehicles just to make people realize that it's not new technology. I'm just like, why are you like, I don't want to get one of those newfangled electric cars. It's like they preceded combustion engines. There's nothing new about an electric car. It's just politics that prevented it and money that prevented it from becoming a thing. The Americans pioneered all of the motor car action, the Henry Fords of this world. These people were great. America has got, has basically got the car sewn up. What was the name of Henry? Oh, it was the Model T, wasn't it? It was the Model T. Yeah. That was a vehicle that dealt a blow to the electric car. Introduced in 1908, the Model T made gasoline-powered cars widely available and affordable. By 1912, the gasoline car cost only $650, whereas an electric roadster sold for $1,750. Yeah, but you were having to put gas into a combustion engine. Which company in 1975 used electric vehicle, Jeeps for delivery? Oh, that's a very good question. I don't know. You tell me. What's the answer? Oh, it was the Postal Service. It was the mail. It was the mailman. Because, these little mail vehicles that go around, and I love them, fascinated by them, but why are they not electric? Anyway, over the next 30 years, electric vehicles entered a sort of dark ages with little advancement in the technology. Cheap, abundant gasoline and continued improvement in the internal combustion engine hampered demand for alternative fuel vehicles. And then into the 60s and the 70s, oil prices and gasoline shortages, peaking with the 1973 Arab oil embargo, created a growing interest in lowering the US's dependence on foreign oil and finding homegrown sources of fuel. And Congress took note and passed the Electric and Hybrid Vehicle Research, Development and Demonstration Act of 1976, authorizing the Energy Department to support research and develop in electric and hybrid vehicles. You see, the point is that the combustion engine, fundamentally, even though it had more moving parts and it was more complex and it required more mechanics to fix it and it broke all the time and all that stuff, because, you know, an electric car is 3 components. There's only 3 components in an electric car. The battery, the inverter, and the electric motor. That's it. There's nothing else in the car. Nothing else to go wrong. Just 3 things. When I take my electric car to be serviced, do you know what they do with a service? They tick a bunch of boxes and then they fill up the washer fluid for the windscreen wipers. And that's it. That's a service for an electric car. The best stuff, in my opinion, I've driven electric cars for 5 years, so the best thing with an electric car, without a shadow of a doubt, is the instant torque. It's the best thing. It's not like a combustion engine that has to rev. So, you know, when you put your foot on the gas, it kind of starts slowly and then goes fast as the engine starts to rotate. Electric car doesn't have that. An electric motor, if you've ever looked at an electric motor, it's either on or it's off. There's no rev. It doesn't like build up speed and then start going. You turn on an electric motor and it's instantly on. And that's really the most exciting thing about owning an electric car, is when you put your foot on the gas, all it does is turn the motor on and you go fast immediately. Yeah, but all of that stuff's in combustion engine cars as well. The thing that's exclusive to electric cars is the instant torque. And if you've been in one, you'll know what I'm talking about, because literally the car starts so quickly, it moves off so fast, it pushes you back in the seat. It's like, wow, this is quick. Because there is no revving. The car is either going or it's off. It's very interesting. Anyway. I've decided, with all the new electric cars coming on the market, I've been looking at all of them. I'm very interested in the Hyundai Ioniq 5. That's the one I recommend you look at, Carla. The Hyundai Ioniq 5. That's the one that I would get. And the reason I would get it is, A, it looks like something out of the 1980s. But B, it has a solar panel on the roof that charges the car. So you don't even have to plug it in. I mean, the solar panel doesn't give you enough energy. Apparently, it'll give you like 20 miles, 25 miles a month. But it just supports the charging. It's very interesting to me. But I'm going to stick with the one that I have because I love it. Thank you for joining me. We're going to discuss some of these other subjects tomorrow because we've got lots that we didn't get to today. So we'll just we'll carry on with some of these conversations. And maybe we didn't mention Meatloaf, but rest in peace, Meatloaf, because he's such a huge talent. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9. Your pal